I certainly wouldn't leave you as long as you're in mourning. Very most unfriendly. Here, if I was in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. Should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes. So long as you're not too long. Never saw anyone take so long to get dressed with such little result.
Well, better that than always being overly dressed as you are.
Oh, please. If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I more than make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you've got to catch the 4-5, and I wish you a safe trip back to London. This bun ring, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
It has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is all. First, I must see her before I leave. Make arrangements for another bunbury. There she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but even momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Cecily.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope, Cecily, that I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly. You seem to me to be, in every way, the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I would like to copy your remarks into my diary.
You really keep a diary. May I have a look?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own private thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I do hope you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Well, Cecily, ever since I first laid eyes upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
Well, I don't think you should tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Oh, Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
I'll let you come round next week at the same hour.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anyone in the whole world but you, Cecily. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you, Cecily?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you of course have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One believes there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Oh, Cecily. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day I went out and bought this little ring in your name. And this is the bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Oh, darling. It's very pretty, isn't it? Did I get you this?
Oh, yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for your leading such a bad life. Oh, and this is the box in which I keep your dear letters.
Letters are my own sweet treasure, little charming so-and-so, Cecily. I've never actually written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well when I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
Do let me read them, please, Cecily.
No, they would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after the engagement was called off were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
Darling, was our engagement ever called off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. Here, you can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is best to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Darling, why did you break it off? What had I done? I've done nothing at all, Cecily. Cecily, I'm very, very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off. Particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it would hardly have been a real engagement if it had not been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Really? What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Oh, yes, with a little help. But yes.
I'm so glad.
Darling, you won't break off our engagement again, will you?
Well, I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
You mean to say you couldn't love me if my name was not Ernest?
But what name?
Oh, any name. I mean, Algernon, for instance.
Oh, but I don't like the name of Algernon.
I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon at all. It is not at all a bad name. In fact, it is rather an aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, you mean to say if my name was something else, you couldn't love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Your rector here is, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of the rites of all the ceremonials of the church?
Oh, yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on the most important christening. Business about business. Go to see him on business.
Oh?
I shall be more than half an hour.
Considering we have been engaged since the 14th of February last, and that I'm only meeting you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
Oh, what an impetuous boy he is. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Well, Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come out. I'm sure Mr. Worthing will be back soon. And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. Ah, I suppose one of the many good elderly ladies who Uncle Jack is associated with in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you more already than I can say.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then it is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps it's worth me mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that's quite as it should be. Once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. So would you mind me looking at you through my glasses?
No, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
Oh, you are here on a short visit, I suppose.
No, I live here.
Oh, your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also.
No, I have no mother, nor indeed any relations.
Indeed?
It is my dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, who has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, how strange. He never mentioned to me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows almost interestingly hourly. Cecily, I have liked you ever since I have met you, but I cannot pretend that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. In fact, you speak with perfect candour, Cecily.
Pray do, Gwendolyn. I believe that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Quite. Well, to speak with perfect candour, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as